Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root, from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, the Arizona Cardinals. And with me, talking about one of the worst games we've watched, well, at least how things happened, my co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we get to talk about what ultimately became a clown show at State Farm Stadium on Sunday when the Cardinals lost their third straight game on a last-second field goal, losing 22-21 to the lowly Tennessee Titans. It wasn't just that they lost. That was part of it, but it was also the ridiculous nature in which they did lose after they were dominant. And, oh, my gosh. Before we go into things, Seth, let's ask the question, is this the worst loss we've ever seen from the Cardinals? I'm going to say no, but it might be the most embarrassing, if that makes any sense.
I was going to say, we watched them set a NFL record until last year with a loss in the NFC Championship game. I mean, that was far more, that was much worse of a loss than this. This was, like you said, this is embarrassing. This is one of those games where you look at and it's embarrassing because everybody's talking about it, right? Like, oh my gosh, yes. Everybody's discussing how disgusting it was and all the things that went wrong. But the reality becomes, this was a situation that the Cardinals again put themselves in a position to allow a team to win a game. And we've talked the last couple of weeks about finishing and urgency and things of that nature, and it all kind of came to a forefront in this game, and there were a calamity of errors, which makes it more embarrassing, right? Like you said, probably the most embarrassing game of at least the last, you've been doing this about 15 16 years. I've been doing this about 12. It probably is the most embarrassing game of that tenure. I don't remember far enough back into the early Arizona or Phoenix Cardinals days where embarrassment was on the table all the time. But this is, one of those situations that you look at and you wonder how a staff in general survives it, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's it. For me, what makes it's the most embarrassing because they were doing so well early in the game. So it's the greatest collapse we've ever seen the Cardinals do. I think it's the greatest absolutely collapse that we've ever seen. I think the worst loss I've ever seen was the 2012 loss, the 58-0 game. Basically, that sealed the fate for Ken Wisenhunt. When they lost 58-0 to the Seahawks. There's been some pretty bad ones over the years, but I'm still going to say that one was the absolute the worst game I've ever seen the Cardinals play. And I'm talking dating back to 1989, 1990, when I first started to pay attention to the Cardinals. That one was just, but it was an embarrassment from start to finish. There was an embarrassment start finish. This one just was, I don't know if I've ever seen the Cardinals have a clown show of a game. That was a clown show of a game, how that second half did. And honestly, it came down to three stupid things. If any one of those three stupid things doesn't happen, then we're talking about, and we were talking about in our group chat, let's talk about the bad things, that there's the three absolutely embarrassing things that happened. The first one is the when Yelda snapped that ball too early. John Gaines he was making a call. At first, people, the broadcast thought that they were pointing and saying that they were offsides. Afterwards, it became very clear that Gaines was calling out a protection, something that the right guard often does, calling out a protection. Will Hernandez would do that when he played. And so I'm probably not sure what John Gaines was doing. Kyler was noticing Gaines make that, and the ball hits him square in the face mask. They lose the ball. That would have been at least 3 points. Those 3 points were the difference. That was stupid. Yelda messed up the snap count. And then I even like the interception, the circus play of that interception turned touchdown. That was just stupid unlucky. There wasn't anything egregious on that. Yes, Rabbit should have held on to the ball. Keitrell should have gotten down instead of, defensive backs when they go up. The big guys are trained to do that. Like what you should do when the ball is on the ground, you drop to the ground and recover instead of trying to grab it. And then it just turns into touchdown. That was stupid bad luck. That was a terrible play. It was a circus play. And then of course basically there's two inexcusable things. It was the snap that went off of Kyler's face, and then obviously the one that everyone's talking about, Emari Demercado's dropping the ball as he crossed the goal line. Now, there's no excuse for that. I still don't know how, Seth, and what nobody's talking about, I still don't know how they overturned that call on review, because I don't think it was clear that he left control before he crossed the goal line.
It's just one of those situations.
The league was just like, oh, we can't do that. So it's like, I don't think it was conclusive that he lost control. As he was crossing the goal line, he starts to but at that point, that's not when the fumble starts. It's not when he starts moving his hand. So, that's a different thing. No one's talking about that. I thought that was egregious for them to overturn it, but oh my gosh, poor Demercado. And like, as much as I like him as a player, the fact that he's not cut is absurd to me. But that's a different conversation.
Right, but it goes back to what you're talking about embarrassing and not finishing games and losses and all that stuff. There's no accountability from the top down, and we'll get into the FA accountability, the media-based accountability, right? But like, there's no accountability from the top down, and so that's how you end up with results like this consistently. Here's the thing, Justin. I joked about it when Kyle Odegaard, I want to say, but it might have been somebody else. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was Kyle Odegaard. He tweeted out something to the effect of this is, or he reposted something to the effect of like, hey, this is the third consecutive games that where's it at? I just want to make sure I get it right. Oh, there it is. Okay. So he reposted that this was the third consecutive game to losing on the final play of the fourth quarter. That's NFL history. NFL history. And it's like, well, if you're not excited about your team being part of NFL history.
Historic Arizona Cardinals team right here in 2025. Historic.
And so you have to look at it and gauge it off of that. And so that just is one of those situations where obviously you and I are joking, but like, this is the reality. Like, you only have situations like that where you make NFL, and the NFL has been around for a long time. Just
so long.
You are talking about the fact that this franchise, as inept as it has been, has done something that it's never done before. And again, that's what makes it embarrassing, right? Like, you're finding new lows in your history of lows. I mean, they're genuinely one of, if not the worst professional sports franchises in all of American sports, North American sports. Because I guess we throw in the NHL and Toronto teams in the NBA and
I don't know enough about them to even include, but definitely the Cardinals are arguably one of the worst teams in NFL history in terms of its. Yeah, they've had some good stretch, but very few good stretches.
But that's just it. You know, everybody's, and you and I have said this a 1,000 times. It's not that we are convinced necessarily that Jonathan Gannon, Kyler Murray, Drew Petzing are the guys. That's not where our hope, I guess is the best term for it, comes from. It's the fact that we are, I guess, smart enough, but maybe that's, unfair to other fans, but like we're smart enough to realize that this is not a franchise that's going, like the Bruce Arians, that was a fluke.
It was. Right? They got lucky with Arians because he was old enough that nobody wanted him.
And so the only guy that you can look at in their history that you can say like this was a good impressive hire was Wisenhunt, right? Like hot commodity coming off a Super Bowl, came to Arizona. But again, what did they have in place? Well, they had, Matt Leinart, Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bold. Like you look at what they had in place and you go, and you're a youngish coordinator, again, back in those days of the NFL, right? 45 was young for a head coach. And you go, oh, I'd give this guy a shot. But let's also be honest. He was a good enough coach to coach the Denny Green players to an NFC championship. He was not a good enough coach to ever coach the Ken Wisenhunt players to anything in two franchises, and then has never, ever again been a head coach. And then he's been out of the league since 2019, right? So like this is a guy, so again, when we talk about the best, like, young coach in the franchise's history, like this is what makes Sunday embarrassing, right? Jess, is like this franchise is embarrassing. And they've never ever done what they did on Sunday. That's what makes it embarrassing.
It's very hard. You've been listening, guys who's been listening to me for years, writing what it's like. I am as hopeful and as positive and optimistic about things as you will ever come across. Trying not to go to the side of homerish, but I just can't, man. Like it's hard. It's hard to remain any sort of positivity because guess what? Like as a writer, as a podcaster, do you want to read and listen to constant negativity about? No, that's not me generally in life, but it is so hard to look at what happened on Sunday and have any ounce of hope with what is coming for the rest of this season. And really it comes down just a couple of plays. And the question that we posed was this: if Demercado crosses the goal line, or if they don't overturn it, like we're still embarrassed that he did it, but if that's not overturned, and if that interception doesn't turn into a touchdown, what are we saying? The sky wouldn't be falling anymore. And we'd be talking about a 28-15, at least a 28-15 win over a bad Titans team where they win by double digits and looked good offensively for their first half. Maybe the shaky second half maybe causes a bit of concern, but we're like, okay, we're going in the right direction. They come down basically two plays, two weird, well, one just absolutely inexcusable, and one just the flukiest of fluke plays. And I'm going to compare that fluky play Okay, because the Cardinals benefited for one just like that. And like last year, when Jonah Williams, I can't remember who the throw was to, when it was fumbled into the end zone and Jonah Williams dove on the ball for the touchdown. That's that type of fluky play. When your offensive lineman scores a touchdown on a fumble, that's a fluke. And when your rookie quarterback throws an interception that then turns into a touchdown, also a fluke. But sort of basically the only type of fluke that would happen to the Arizona Cardinals. That wasn't the only bad thing that we saw from that day, from that game. And I think we have to point to it, as frustrating as we are, as frustrated as we are about how the offensive play calling went late in the game. When they're trying to run out the clock and they'd run 3 straight run plays after that, and they had a chance to put it away. You know, it shows once again the conservative nature of this coaching staff. And as much as we want to yell at Drew Petzing, we have to understand that this is what Gannon wants. It's what he wants. It's what Petzing was. That's the, you know, because if Gannon wanted this from Petzing, didn't want it from Petzing, it would be changing, and it's not. But then on the other side of the ball, so we were all talking about the offense. This defense doesn't know how to stop anyone when it counts, ever. And they rely on individual big plays at the last minute. And that's the only reason why we weren't saved from overtime against the Saints, because Buda and JT broke up that pass. Not recover the onside kick against Carolina. You got Calais to get that sack. They were on a crash course for a loss right there, and it would have been a clown show then. But like Cam Ward has looked terrible. And then in the fourth quarter, he looks like whatever, like maybe things clicked for him or the desperation of the moment. But the fact of the matter is this defense, while it looks good at times, is awful in the clutch.
Well, and it goes back to what you talked about earlier, Jess. This defense, I mean, it's ironic that we're talking about this, you know, that your stuff's always listening. But on my phone right now, NFL Draft Files just kind of posted on X about 14 hours ago all these throws that Cam Ward made in this game. And they're all fourth quarter throws. And you watch them, and they all have one thing in common, Jess.
Oh no.
It's always 4 guys rushing the passer, dropping 7, and so there's no pressure, and so the guys are just running free. And that's, I mean, again, at what point do you go, I mean, think about it, Jess. Even with all the shenanigans, right, leading up to even that 3rd and 8 run where you're like, what on, like, did you really just, okay, whatever. 1st and 10 from the 18. And again, comes down to it, 1 third down, Jess. 1 third down. And it was a 3rd and 3. Like, there's no urgency. There's no them going after him. It's just all very much like, all right, death by 1,000 cuts. Don't get beat deep. But now you're missing Max Melton. You're missing Garrett Williams. You're relying on, I mean, who was the guy that got beat again deep?
It was Keitrell
Clark, who's a good player. I mean,
had some good moments in the game, but he's a good 4th, 5th corner on your team.
Exactly. If he's your cornerback 4 or 5, you're in a fantastic. But he's cornerback, we'll say 1, 2 right now, because obviously when Will's healthy, he can be 1. But he's cornerback 1 or 2, and he's just not up to the task, even against 30-whatever-year-old Calvin Ridley, who's looked awful all season. I mean, Jess, think about this. Think about this, Jess. Calvin Ridley coming into the game had 141 yards receiving on the season.
Nearly double that.
He had 131 yards receiving against the Cardinals. Like, it's just such a baffling situation. And you look at it, so much of it came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
This team like, I don't want to say they don't care, because they do, but like, they let Calvin Ridley gain almost 100 yards in the fourth quarter of a game.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny. Notice how when they're trying to make things happen in the fourth quarter, they go to their best receiver. It's crazy. Right. It's crazy, right? Like, the fourth quarter, the Cardinals didn't even look at Marvin Harrison. They didn't really look at Trey McBride. It's just a number of things. The defense is like, they're doing good at times, but we've seen time and time again when they need it. Like, they were lucky. They were lucky against New Orleans, but Spencer Rattler took them down at the end of the game, and it would have been overtime. Or if they'd have gone for two, the Cardinals probably lose, and the sky would be falling earlier. It nearly happened against Carolina. Mac Jones did it to them in week 3. Sam Darnold did it to him in week 4. Like, after Kyler took him back, got that game tied. And what do they give up? They give up a massive play to Jackson Smith-Njigba. And once again, when this coaching staff says, okay, we trust our defense, the defense proved it cannot be trusted in the clutch. They give up big pass plays every time.
Well, and that's one of those things that you and I talked about, right? And we're not saying that they should completely change things or but one of the things that people just have harped on for the last, now 5 weeks, but we've had people that have been harping on it all off season too, is Drew Petzing. Look, I talked about this a week ago. I'm talking about it again now. Petzing is calling the plays that are basically what he's being asked to do. Don't screw it up. And so Gannon, whether it's belief or arrogance or a combination of the two, has basically said, like, we don't need you to win games. We need you not to lose games. And we're going to rely on our defense. And like you said, the defense isn't up to the task. And I texted you about this earlier today. People talk about the influences and this and that and the other thing. Just the two influences of this franchise, where most of the staff gets their influence from, the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski, 31st in scoring per game, 24th in passing yards, 30th in passing touchdowns, 26th in rushing offense, 24th in yards per attempt. Okay. But that defense is something special, right? Second in yards allowed in the NFL. That defense is phenomenal. And then who's the other team? The Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, they're 12th in scoring offense. That's not bad. But they're 30th in yards, 31st in passing yards, 25th in rush. They have Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, and they're 25th in rushing yards on the season. They're 29th in rushing yards per attempt, Jess.
Oh my gosh.
Like, when you look at franchises and you look at teams and you see what the guys that they are trying to copy, and copy is not the right word, but they're trying to emulate. The Eagles and the Browns are the philosophies that Gannon and Petzing stem from? The Eagles are 4-1 because they have the most talent in the NFL.
Yes.
Not because they're playing well. The Browns are 1-4 and just traded their veteran quarterback, who I've actually seen Cardinals fans talk about they should go after before he signed with them. So again, like, Joe Flacco can't do bupkis in the Kevin Stefanski offense under Kevin Stefanski. Like, why would he come here and be more effective? And so that's the thing, is like, everybody kind of remembers what the Eagles did last year in the Super Bowl, and they go, yeah, they're an explosive, dynamic offense, and they remember the Eagles Super Bowl win. They remember the Eagles bludgeoning of the Commander Skins in the NFC Championship game, right? They don't remember that they were the 29th best passing offense in the NFL. They didn't throw the ball. It wasn't what they wanted to do.
In fairness, they didn't need to, because they had
Right.
Saquon Barkley having a special year, and
Right.
But that's how they kind of build this team. They build it on James Conner. They're built on James Conner here, and they basically go from that, right? They
Right.
build the offense around James Conner being great, and then they let Kyler do the rest.
And so, when you have no James Conner, and people will say, well, the Eagles had A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown had like 70 more yards or 80 more yards than Marvin Harrison Jr. It wasn't like A.J. Brown put up 1,400 yards, right? Devontae Smith had 833 yards. Like, Dallas Goedert, who is a very well-paid tight end, had 496 yards receiving last year. Like, this wasn't this dynamic, explosive offense. It was, we're going to let our defense, who is elite,
Yes.
win football games. And that's where Jonathan Gannon came from. That's the philosophy he's learned under. And so that's what he's going with. And he picked a guy in Drew Petzing who fits what he wants to do, who fits in that mold. And so when he says, I don't have a problem with the offense, he's not lying. He might have a problem with execution, like you said, the Froholt snapping the ball early, Emari Demercado dropping the ball early. He might have problems with execution of sections of the offense, but he doesn't have a problem with the offense, because this is what the offense he wants to run looks like, and that's what he's doing. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. That's why you're seeing games. People forget the Cardinals the Cardinals went into Philly with a fresh off a recovery. Kyler Murray put up 449 yards of total offense, scored 35 points and beat the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. The Eagles then proceeded to lose 27-10 to the New York Giants and 32-9 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in successive weeks, and got knocked out of the playoffs in the wild card round. But like Jess said, they had an elite defense, first in yards, second in scoring. That's unheard of. That's just unheard of. They slowed the game down to a complete and utter. I mean, they ran almost 200 more plays than their opponents did last year. What they did last year was not a sustainable way of winning football games. And I know people are like, well, they won a Super Bowl. Who cares? Exactly. Who cares? They won a Super Bowl, so it doesn't matter. But that's how they wanted to run things. And it's working, or it worked for a full season, and they won a Super Bowl. They're 4-1 this year, but I don't think anybody looks at what the Eagles are doing and fear the Eagles this year like they did last year, right? I mean, again, they're 30th in offense. They've been outgained by their opponents 361 yards this season. They're 16th in scoring defense this year, Jess. Like, they're just average defensively.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're winning games, but I mean, you look at their wins, 24-20, 2017, 33-26, 31-25. Like, those are all one-score games. And then they lost this week in a one-score game. And we've talked about one-score games before. Like, those are genuinely a coin flip. We're seeing the coin flip in Arizona too, right? The Cardinals won 2 one-score games.
Now they lost
3. Like, that's the coin flip of one-score games. You can't put yourself in a position to do that. And so, long-winded of this is you're going to get the same results over and over again if that's your philosophy, because it's not a sustainable way to play things or run things. Let's be honest, Jess, and this is no shade to Michael Carter and Emari Demercado, but especially when you're running back 3 and 4 as your main offensive weapons, like, you have a top 12 paid quarterback in the NFL. You have a top 4 drafted receiver. You have the second highest paid tight end in NFL history. You invested a top 6 pick in a left tackle. Throw the ball. Like, be aggressive. Be explosive. Like, do something different than what you're doing.
Coming on next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's talk about maybe a little bit of good that came from that game. That's coming next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web, as we talk about that loss to the Tennessee Titans, and everyone's focusing on the negative. There were a few good things. We got to recognize that. Obviously, this segment probably won't go too long, but I think what you have to look at was the start offensively. There's basically 2 things we look at. The addition of Will Hernandez to the starting lineup was great. I don't know if that has been the difference, by inserting Will Hernandez back at right guard. Now, granted, they didn't have Evan Brown, but Evan Brown's not been playing well. So Isaiah Adams in for, Evan Brown perhaps was not an upgrade or downgrade. But Will Hernandez, they produced 9 yards per play in the 3 drives that he was at the game. And 2, it appears that Mark's going to be okay. That fourth quarter that he had against Seattle is carrying over, and whatever in his head was going on isn't happening, or didn't carry over, because he was great. He was the double moss, the catches that he had. He looked engaged. He looked locked in. And then the only thing that we have to look at now is, why is he not getting more looks? And we know why. It's because there's nothing being done creatively to make sure that he gets easy looks. Everything that is thrown to him is a hard thing. And they're counting on him. They don't scheme anything easy for Mark. And that's the shame. But what I think we can come away from a very positive thing and say, Marv's going to be fine. And Will Hernandez in the lineup, that's a good thing. Now, granted, Tennessee's defense is not particularly good. And we didn't talk about this as a negative. The Cardinals still put up rushing yards, although the rushing yards are not as good as they look. Like, you look at the 168 yards, 71 of those came on a play that ended up being a turnover. They still only averaged, outside of the Demercado run, 3.5 yards per carry. But we didn't see an efficient run game, but it wasn't awful. And so the running game is somewhat sustainable early in games, even with Michael Carter, which is a good thing moving forward, but not a great thing.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we're talking about a team that needs to be able to run the ball to be effective, because that's the way they coach. And so if they're not able to do that, then we kind of see what happens. And that's been obvious in especially those second halves where they can't salt games away like they want to. A couple other things I thought were good. I thought we saw, Will Johnson continues to look like a special player when he's out there. That's a good thing. Josh Sweat continues to have
Josh Sweat. He's producing 4 sacks, 5 games. He's earning his money. I
think he's up to 5 sacks, right?
I think.
Yeah, he's up to 5. So he's got 5 in 5 games. That's at least what Pro Football Reference has. I'm using the actual site.
It is. He's averaging a sack a game. He keeps going that 17 sacks, and that is, he's getting paid like an 8-sack guy right now. So,
right. Well, and you put it on it too, 6, tackles for loss. He's having, a borderline career year. Let's just keep it turning the right way. But just that's another thing that we can talk about if we talk negatives a little more is Josh Sweat, great. Calais Campbell, been good. I mean,
he didn't. He was more or less invisible in this game, but
let's be honest. Calais Campbell is playing great for a 39-year-old.
Yes,
Calais Campbell is playing good for a NFL defensive lineman. I think that's the difference, right? Like he's playing amazing for a 39-year-old. But
2 sacks outside of Calais and Josh Sweat.
And that's a problem.
That is a problem.
And then, the other thing, this was a game where outside of Will Johnson, there was a lot of struggles in the secondary. I mean, Dadrian Taylor-Demerson had a nice game. It was unfortunately negatively highlighted with the fumble off the interception. But I mean, we haven't seen enough from guys like Keitrell Clark. And again, he's being put in an impossible situation. He's not an outside every down corner. Jalen Thompson, had a bad week, and it was a bad week to have a bad week. Budda Baker struggled in this game. It was a lot of negative coverage grades in this game. And then you look at it, you mentioned it, but there just isn't enough of a pass rush. But again, Will Johnson looks fantastic. TJ Mustipher continues to be an anomaly. I mean, it's very weird for a guy that was drafted or undrafted, I guess technically, right? In 2023 to and played 42 snaps in his career to start making an impact in year 3 on his 3rd or 4th different team. So it's cool to see that, right? That's a cool situation because it's just so rare. I think on the offensive side, Paris continues to blossom into a special talent. I don't think anybody really would disagree with that thought right now. We mentioned the names earlier, but I guess we should, shout them out. And you mentioned Marv, but Trey McBride continues to be Trey McBride. Yes. So that's the thing is you've got these guys that played well, that you expect to play well. It's just that you're not getting a whole lot from a lot of other guys, and that's definitely an issue, is it not?
It is. Coming up next on the Rise Up Secret podcast, the Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web. Let's talk about Jonathan Gannon. What's going on there? That's coming up next on Rise Up Secret. We're back on the Rise Up Secret podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web. Things for Jonathan Gannon suddenly don't look good. I think the things are starting. The trust fans are having is starting to erode. But I mean, first off, we've got to talk about the blow up that he had with Demercado on the sideline. Obviously, the video surfaced of Gannon lost it on the sideline. This is the first time we've ever seen him do that. He's pretty much a composed guy on the sideline. Just chewed the heck out of Emari Demercado, and then you see him strike him twice. There's a lot of opinions on appropriate, not appropriate. My take personally is it good? No, definitely not good. But is it horrible? No, because it was in the pads. It's something that we've seen. And so I don't think it's a positive, but I also think I don't think it's something egregious, just out of character for Gannon. Now, it came out today on Tuesday that Gannon was fined $100,000 by the team for that, and that there won't be any investigation by the NFLPA because the Cardinals took care of it. And all I've got to say about this, and I get, if we're talking about workplace behavior, management and labor, management being the coaches in the front office, and labor, that falls into that category. Bruce Arians was fined in $50,000 in 2022 when he took a swat at a safety's helmet after play, after a mess up, and so there's a little bit of precedent there, and I think it's just the league protecting itself in terms of workplace conditions. That said, we all know what this is. The only reason the Cardinals did this, the only reason, is because so many people are talking about it. That's all. That's the only thing. This is an optics thing. The Cardinals felt they had to do something because people were talking about it. And, Gannon, to his credit, whether or not the fine came first, so maybe he was made aware of the fine that night, Monday morning. My guess is his remorse is genuine based on all the interactions that we've had with Jonathan Gannon, the way he talks about character and things like that. I believe he genuinely felt remorse for how he acted on the sideline, because it is not how he wishes to portray himself. He believes he needs to be. There's a reason why he doesn't fly off the handle in press conferences. There's a reason why you don't see him lose his cool like you see other head coaches do on the sideline, because he believes philosophically that is his job to do. And he did lose it. And so that was out of character. Is that something is that a common thing we see at all levels of football? 100%. You see it at all levels of football. But to find out after he said he apologized to the team, he talked about it publicly and how that's not how he wants to look, and then to get the fine afterwards, you're just like, sure, I don't blame the team for doing it, but he lost his cool, and they're not doing anything unless here's the thing with Emari Demercado. No, he's not getting cut. As far as we know, he's not getting benched, but he's already a role player. Perhaps there is a fine for egregious type things that go behind the scenes. I know NFL teams do have fines for things like that that are established behind the scenes, and perhaps there's that doing that, but we'll never find out about that. But it feels kind of gross when Demercado's inexcusable mistake goes unaccounted for. There's no accountability for that. I'm sure there's accountability for that behind the scenes. It's not what we want to see. Even I said it during the game. You've got to cut it. With how things are going, I like Demercado and I want Demercado on the team, but that is the type of thing that gets players cut. You look back at 2018, what happened to DJ Swearinger after a game? They cut him. They cut him after a game because of how he acted. And maybe it was more about in the locker room. We saw it happen with Benjamin. He got cut, but that was more off the field than on the field. And maybe that, but it feels that this fine that was reported by Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport was more for appearances only. And that we know that the Cardinals, if it had this video not been talked about, nothing would have happened. If this hadn't been caught on camera and then people talking about it, getting millions of views, nothing would have happened. And that's the thing. I don't like when that is the case. If you're going to be as an organization, you've got to hold the line one way or the other, and not only do it for optics. And I think 100% that's what this was about.
Oh, buddy, this is a franchise that cares only about optics.
Homework clause.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this team.
Well, and you look at it, I mean, there's other things too that we've talked about, right? Like the update on the 2028 practice facility, right? You know, people were like, wait, I thought they were going to do it the old. No, because you got to remember, they got a huge land deal, and they're going to make a lot of money.
Yes, they are.
But
yeah, that's great for the team. They got 137 acres, and what was it? I can't remember. However many 100 acres, and 30 of it is going to be for the complex. This is 100. The only team they were going to renovate the Tempe facility, but they're doing it this way because it's a real estate venture. It's 100%. It's what it is. It's money making, and that's fine. That's fine. But
there's nothing wrong with it. But they like, because that's the thing is, because in the end, the only thing that gets the headlines aren't going to be about the real estate and that.
The shopping centers and all the development that's going to make Bidwill millions of dollars every year.
No, it's going to be about they finally upgrade. Look, they upgraded the practice facility, like 200, and to your point, 217 acre property. They're only using 30 acres.
30 for the practice. Now, granted, that's double their current facility, but they didn't buy all that land for the facility. That's part of a very large project meant to make a lot of money.
Right.
That's what it is.
And so you look at it again, it's the optics of it. So it's, the homework clause, the way, the Casa Rojas or Roja or whatever, like all of that stuff is like optics. And unfortunately, that's what the owner cares about the most. And I've talked with you about this. I don't know if we've discussed it on the air. I've talked with you about this. And we've talked about it. I know for a fact offline. And I those that don't know, my wife and I travel to Vegas a lot. That's like our getaway spot, long weekends, stuff like that. So we made friends in Vegas. And one of the things that we've talked to these people about is the Raiders. And where I'm going with this is the Raiders and the Cardinals, and now the Rams and the Chargers, but more the Rams, are destination games for opposing team fan bases. Fans travel in droves to go see their team play against the Cardinals, against the Raiders, against the Rams. Is it better when the team is good? Yes. Does it matter? No. Did you see SoFi Stadium in that Rams 49ers Thursday night game? That was
Santa Clara South, man.
Right. That was 70% Niners fans. The same thing happens in Arizona. The same thing happens in Las Vegas. So that's the thing. People can boycott. You do it. It doesn't matter, man. They're going to sell out every game because the opposing fans are coming to town. Like that stuff doesn't matter. And so the optics of doing this is amazing. We don't accept this kind of behavior. This is abhorrent. I can't believe this would happen. It was on camera, so we got to do something about this, right? Like $100,000 drop in the bucket for JG. I mean, sucks. It is what it is. He's probably one of the lowest paid head coaches in the NFL, but in the grand scheme of things, if he's making, $2.5 million a year, again, not a whole lot. And that's how they do it. That's the cardinal way. Like what is going to, and this is the thing too, is it's always snap decision crap like this, right? That then it actually is worse. But this, I genuinely asking, because I would love your input on this. Like, do you think he cares about what like when people laugh at when something like this happens? Like, why did you fine your head coach $100,000 for doing that? Like, really? Like, because that's I mean, I have seen, I would say 25% reaction of like, good, you don't touch a player. Okay, we can all agree on that. Like, you shouldn't physically push another, a player. However, as Jess pointed out earlier, this isn't, a principal pushing a teacher. This isn't that type of situation. This is, a heated, fierce game where adrenaline is flowing, and you just watch your team go from a 28-6 lead to going, oh crap, we're about to give up another lead again, right? Like, so those are all probably going through JG's mind in that situation. Again, doesn't excuse it, just reality. That being said, man, it's like, how many more of these can we have? Like, at what point is it looked at from more than just like, oh, this is bad, or this can't happen? At what point is it looked at as like, there needs to be actual accountability for what's happening? And I'm not saying that, every time somebody makes a mistake, somebody loses their job. But again, you're the third or fourth string running back
Right.
on a mediocre team. And you literally have now, in 2 different games, cost your team games.
Correct. And yet he's no other punishment because it's what's best for the team. Demercado would get picked somewhere else. He'd get picked up somewhere else because
and
his
no
skill
offense.
set is nice, but he is 100% replaceable. Love his story. Great kid, very solid. Has made some really big plays, but at the same time, 100% replaceable. And on a team where things right now feel like they're holding on by just a thread, you got to do that. You got to pull the trigger, right? And that's what the thing with Gannon is. Is Gannon this close to losing this team? Is that what it feels like right now?
I mean, this close, or genuinely, has he already? Like, does stuff like that make players go,
Never mind, we're not going to listen anymore.
right? Like, nah, man, like this dude finally cares after something. And again, was it an egregious error? 1000%. There's literally no way you can look at that and go like, oh, that, oh, well, what are you going to do? No, that was an egregious, like, just damning mistake. But also, like, you haven't done anything about all the mistakes throughout the season,
right?
So do you actually care? And that's how the players, and so to the players, right, wrong, or otherwise, they're going, oh damn, coach actually cares finally. Like, why? Because it's against the worst team in the NFL, or the team that was expected to be the worst team in the NFL. And it's like, why didn't you care that much when what's his name? Oh shoot, Chad Ryland, biffed the kickoff.
Right.
Why didn't you care that much when Zay Jones dropped the pass? Why didn't you care that much, the week before when Marv struggled? Like, why didn't you care? Why is it just now that you care? Why didn't you go off on Kyler for one of the interceptions against Seattle or things like that? Like, why is it just now that you cared? And why was it against, a backup afterthought running back, right?
Sure.
Like, why is it taking you so long to actively care? And so that's a fair question, and something that he's going to have to deal with overall. But I mean, you posed the reality so well early in the show, Jess. The numbers are skewed because they're holding teams under 20 points per game on defense. 19.2 points per game. They're 4th in the NFL. They're 21st in yards. 21st, Jess. I genuinely, and I'd have to like do
and here's the thing, and we'll talk about, they're going to face a team this week that scores points.
Yeah.
Remember the 2017 team, or 2016? It was one of the 2 years, and they were like, I think it was 2016, where they're top 5 in both offense and defense. But those defensive numbers were smoke and mirrors because they were doing it against, like, the points were were low because they were playing against bad offenses. And yeah, that's kind of the situation. And we might, like, I'm worried they're going to get absolutely smoked in Indy. And I wanted to bring it back to the Gannon blow up, because the first thing I thought about when I saw that video, because like I remember it was my very first year in the press box. It's my first year out of the press box this year. My first year in the press box, and it was Ken Wisman's final year. Reagan Moia, their fullback, spiked the ball after some play. I think picked up a first down. I got to remember what the scenario was, but he spiked the ball, got hit with a 15-yard penalty, and Whisenhunt absolutely lost his crap on Moia. It happened to coincide that year. That was his last year. And that was when they were in the middle of they'd won 4 in a row, but then lost 11 of the final 12 games. He lost his crap. He lost the team. And then he was fired, and they cleaned house. And that's what led to Bruce Arians and Steve Keim. But that sort of thing, combined with how things are going, that's the thing that this might be the marker of this is what gets him fired. Now, I will say this, and we were talking before the show, is just a couple of years ago, we were talking about Nick Sirianni in the same way. People were talking about Nick Sirianni's lost the team. We got a bad relationship with Jalen Hurts. They weren't playing all that well. They got it turned around. There's still time to get things turned around, but it is very quickly heading in a direction where I didn't think there was any scenario. I think that when I said before the season, I think there was the only scenario in which that Gannon's seat is hot is if this year's a disaster. And right now we are on the verge of a disastrous dumpster fire of a season if things don't turn around quickly. And that's
yeah. If they go 4-13, it's hard to run it back. And people might say, well, let him move on from Kyler and unshackle himself from Kyler and Petzing. Okay.
But what are you going to do?
That's fine. But then you're in the Brian Dable, Brian Callahan situation where you're 1-4 and you have a rookie quarterback and you still look like poo. And so now how do you thrust Cam Ward or Jackson Dart onto a new head coach, right? Like that's what people don't understand is whether or not it's fair or right or any of that crap. And I'm not saying it is. It is the reality of the league. And so to come out and just go like, oh yeah, we should just see the end of the Kyler era and let JG get his guy. Okay, and if it's Joe Flacco and they're 1-4, or Geno Smith and they're 1-4, I mean, it's Justin Fields and they're 0-5. Like, so then you're fired. Or like I said, you're the Giants or the Titans and you go get a young guy, right? It's great. Everything's just peachy. Everything's working out great. And oh crap, we're 1-4. And now we have a young quarterback, but what happens if the new coach doesn't like that young quarterback? We haven't we seen this before too? So that's the thing. Here's my opinion on the whole situation. I think either it's a clean house moment where you're talking head coach, quarterback, all the coaches involved, or as much as people would absolutely hate it, it's a lame duck situation where you run it back one more year and you see if it has anything. And I know people would be like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But like, what are truthfully, what are the other options? I mean, we just went over it and people might say like, oh, well, you could be like the Colts. Okay, but Shane Steichen isn't walking through that door. Shane Steichen is an offensive guru who just needed help. Jonathan Gannon is a defensive guy, and for 3 years he's wanted to win games the same way. Like, that's what the question becomes. And that this might sound like, well, it's never going to work again. And well, I don't know. It probably is not. I mean, the history of the Arizona Cardinals is saying it will not work with Jonathan Gannon because it's worked with one guy, Bruce Arians. I mean, Bruce Arians is literally the only coach that left on his own terms. And so if that's, it working out for everybody involved, that's the reality of it. So that's why for Gannon, it's really easy to say like he's not the guy, right? Like for you and I, going back 3 years ago, it would have been really easy to be like, well, he's just going to be the next guy in line, and in 4 years we'll be looking for the next guy. That's it. That's the easy take because it's the reality. We'd like it to not be the reality. We'd like it to go to the next step and like build something, and that's why we've obviously discussed ad nauseum about the Lions and how they've built it and hoping that they've done it in the right way. The hard part is that Gannon and Dan Campbell are inherently different in terms of philosophy.
Correct. Campbell's like, F it, let's do this. Right. And Gannon's like, no. But let's talk one more thing before we wrap this up. A little bit longer show than normal. Coming next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Future of Drew Petzing. What do we got to see from him? That's coming next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking now about Drew Petzing. Is there, like, everyone keeps wanting to say, fire Petzing. There's like, what are you going to do if you lose Petzing this year? This is different than Mike McCoy. Now, let's remember that. This is different than Mike McCoy in 2018 when things got bad, and so Wilks fired McCoy. You know why it's different? Because McCoy wasn't Wilks' guy. Was not. That was Steve Keim's guy. Steve Keim wanted to give Steve Wilks Mike McCoy.
Right.
Petzing is 100% Gannon's choice. He's the guy that he wanted. So for him to fire Petzing mid-season would be to say that I messed up, which means, well, because he's doing, like, Gannon ties himself to Petzing. Now, here's a little thing, and my son pointed this out. He tweeted it today. We have hope. You know what the coordinators have, how long their contracts are?
3 years, yeah.
3 years. So maybe there's hope if Gannon gets if things don't fall apart completely. They can simply not re-sign Petzing. Now, that'll look bad for Gannon, but he's done it with a couple other coaches. But in this case, it would simply be
it's usually 3 years with coordinators and 2 years with position coaches, right?
Yeah, I think so. And so this will give him an out because his contract expires. So yeah. But that said, and I'm just disappointed because remember what we saw in the Seahawks game where they kind of abandoned their 12 and 13 personnel. They brought it right back. They put Michael Carter in the lineup and they brought 12 and 13 personnel right back. Now, in fairness, the offense looked better in the first half, but I don't get it. What is so hard about featuring your best players? Why can't they feature Marv? Why can't they feature McBride rather than just being they make plays when they're called upon because they're good, but they're not featuring them in any way except for McBride a little bit on those tight end screens, which are fun to watch. This was still 100%. They ran the same game plan they would with James Conner, but they just did it with Michael Carter.
100%, man. And that's what's interesting to me more than anything is like, is who does that come from? I mean, that's genuinely the question we have to ask. So is it a Drew Petzing thing? Or is it a Jonathan Gannon, this is how I want the game script run? And so if it is a Petzing thing, like you said, the reality is eventually they have to just move on. They can't continue to go this way. If it's a Gannon thing, does it matter?
It probably doesn't matter who you got. Like the notion that they say, now I know they're saying in this hindsight, but on that 3rd and 8, when they run the ball to get it down to the 2-minute warning, that sucks. But the fact that they say they didn't like the call, why did it happen? No, they're saying that after the fact. They're having hindsight regret. But we were talking about earlier, I think it was before the show, these guys talk like they believe in Kyler Murray as a quarterback, but they were purposely shackling him. And Kyler's doing what he's coached. That's why he is since he took over after his injury, he is performing and operating the offense exactly the way he's coached to do it. He's being very coachable, which we have to remind people that was one of the criticisms, that he wasn't coachable, that he was going off script, he was trying to stray from what Cliff did, or that he thought he could do better than Cliff. He's doing what he's asked, but they talk like they believe in Kyler. But if they believe in Kyler, why are they not unleashing him? Okay, do this. And then if he doesn't do it, guess what? You have your answer. You have your answer, and you can move on from him because you'll know. Because right now, in these games, we're saying every game that we're looking at, Kyler's not the problem. Kyler hasn't been the solution, but the fact that he couldn't check out of a play, that he can check out of some plays, he couldn't check out of that play. That was the 3rd and 8 play. He couldn't. That was not on the table for them, and that's weird. Is it that they are? Do they worry that Kyler's going to lose them games because they know what he can do, but they also worry about the risk? You think that's it? That they don't trust Kyler to make plays every time?
Yeah, and that's just what it sounds like, right? It's like they don't see.
And they're going to lose Kyler here. They're going to lose him like Cliff did. I think it's getting close.
Well, you saw it in the game, right? Like there were a couple plays, obviously the snap, but there were a couple plays where they get inside, they get into a rhythm, and then you have a false start. Or they come out after the team scores, and immediately the first play he gets sacked, and like no hope sacked, right? Like that 4th quarter sack by Jeff Simmons was like, you're like, guys, I know he's great. Don't get me wrong. He's fantastic, would be immediately the best defensive lineman the Cardinals have had since young Calais Campbell, right? But block him. Like just 1 second, maybe. I don't know. But and so you see the frustration on that, because then it sets them up in 2nd and 20, and you see the frustration on that, because it's almost like it's defeated right away, because the players know, like, unless an individual makes a play, we're not going to get the opportunity to get the first down, because it's going to be conservative play calls. And that's what the problem is like, it's this play not to lose crap, and it's not the way that good teams function. And we can have that discussion all day if this is a good team or not, but playing scared to lose is just a terrible, terrible thing. And and that goes back to what you and I talked about. If it's Petzing, then the problem can be fixed. If it's Gannon, then Petzing can get the boot. It's not going to matter, though.
Nope. And if it's a combination of that plus Kyler, I don't know, but
well, and then that's the thing.
If they get rid of this coaching staff, would they keep Kyler?
You would think not.
Yeah. And so we would just have to watch Kyler, which honestly, I'm ready for. We don't deserve Kyler. We don't deserve Kyler, and he's going to go somewhere, get coached up, and he's going to look like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. That's what's going to go happen. And I'll be here for it as long as it's not for like a team I dislike. But even then, maybe I'll be happy. I'm about done. Now, will I actually give up the car? No, I won't. But have I lost hope? More or less, because next week they play an incredibly good Colts team. Who would have thought? We'll talk about that later this week. So with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast. This is our Cardinals Talk. Seth and I will definitely be back to preview with the Colts. I'm still working on nailing down a guest for an opponent. Paul Brettel can't do it this week from the Colts Wire. Looking at a couple of the possibilities. One of the guys who does the Locked On Colts podcast, maybe something else, trying to nail that down. But we've got at least one more show this week where we'll talk about Cardinals Colts, and feels like they're gonna get smoked this weekend. I hope that's not the case, but it feels like it, doesn't it?
It does.
With that, we'll wrap up this edition of the show. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Ruth. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Run!